Well, Matthew chapter 1, I want to talk about Joseph and how Joseph responded when he's told by God that the woman who you're going to marry, Mary, is in fact pregnant. And of course, this was almost bad news for him. I'm engaged to marry this woman, Mary, and she's pregnant, but not by me, and he doesn't know what to do. And we're told that because he was a righteous man, verse 19, and because he didn't want to make her a public example, he decided to divorce her secretly. But then God says, no, don't do that, because that child is from me. I made her pregnant. Well, she was the only woman ever to become pregnant without a man being involved. But I want us to think about how Joseph reacted, because he was righteous. First of all, he thought, I'll just divorce her, like quietly. Under the law of Moses, there were various things you could do if your wife apparently wasn't faithful. You could have her killed, or you could divorce her. Or in Numbers chapter 5, there was the opportunity for taking the woman before the priest, and he'd decide whether she was guilty or whether she wasn't. And if she was guilty of being unfaithful, then she'd become barren. She couldn't have any more children. Well, there was another option as to what you could do if your wife was unfaithful, and that is you could simply forgive her. The book of Hosea is absolutely full of examples of that, where Gomer sins against Hosea and he's very angry with her, but in the end, he forgives her. Well, I like this. I like the way that God doesn't just say, well, look, there's only one law, only one thing to be done in every case. If this happens, then you must do that. We have a range of choices, because that range of choices develops us. It helps us to think through how we're going to respond. And so in this case, Joseph, because he was righteous, decided that he would just secretly divorce her. In other words, he didn't want to make her ashamed, even though apparently she'd done the wrong thing. And Peter says that love covers sin. Now, that's not to say that we put up with abuse, but on the other hand, it is also true that we should not wish to humiliate others when they sin against us. If we're sinned against, we're in a position of power. You may consider that you're an obscure little person, but actually you've all got people who have sinned against you. And in that sense, we have a position of power. What are we going to do? We can make a big fuss about it. Do you know, she hit me. He used bad language to me. I'll make a big fuss, go on the internet and spread this everywhere. But is that how God deals with your sin and my sin? God's very gentle with us as sinners. And when people sin against us, we're to respond in the same way as God has treated us. We're to reflect his grace to us in how we treat those who sinned against us. This is why we have this range of options, of various choices as to what to do if somebody sins against me. And so Joseph, because he was righteous, because he was just, he didn't have her put to death. He didn't make a public issue about it. He wanted for her sake to deal with this privately and quietly. And that is how we should respond when others sin against us. Now, in the case of Joseph, of course, God revealed to him that actually she hasn't sinned against you. Actually, she is the only woman in history who will become pregnant, but not by a man. And Joseph believed that. This was a huge example to us of believing in God's word, even when it seems absolutely foolish and absolutely obviously not true. Of course, people would have said, well, she slept with a man, didn't she? But no, Joseph believed what God said. And this is the only case in human history where a woman becomes pregnant without a man, and he believed God's word, just as we should. Even when it appears that we stand with our backs to the world, it appears as if we are being foolish. But that is what real faith in God's word is all about.